Yeah.
And they did a Mr. Rogers.
It was so cute. They came in with like sweaters and danced along to.
And you knew what Mr. Rogers was.
Yes.
Okay, again, we link on Tony Bennett and now Mr. Rogers. Because when he started, I knew right away. And I was like waiting for Lady Aberline and the little kitten. And I kind of look over and she's enjoying it. And I thought, Tess knows this. Tess knows Mr.
Like
Rogers.
I had no enjoyment in my whole life. What?
No, but Mr. Rogers was totally an older show.
But wait, I watched it growing up.
Where does it like stop? Where do we stop?
Twitter. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter, and Tess is not.
Twitter is so like 10 years ago. No, I'm just kidding.
It is so 2009.
Are we filming?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going. All right. I don't know how to
Okay, anyway.
be natural with my... We had such a great time at the Strength Summit.
Woo!
It is really difficult to capture just how amazing it was to be around 1,000 other people, literally 1,000 other people at the CenturyLink Center who were as excited, if not more excited, I don't know if that's possible, as excited about strengths as we are. And to share that energy and to be part of that, and so much learning.
So much learning.
Just a tremendous amount of new information, new ideas. We cannot wait to see all of you at our mini summit, the Program Coordinator Training Day, which is next Wednesday. And I was kind of thinking, and I'm going to think out loud, Hannah, because you're behind the camera. I was thinking about how can we create moments of like clips of people talking about their strengths, like when did that happen, what did they feel about it, how did they learn about it, how's it changed their life, and then maybe we can incorporate that into our next gen and Millie to kind of capture those, because we love talking about it, and we were around all these other people that were loving talking about it.
And it was so great because during that time, I mean, we were talking strengths, we were learning about strengths, but then the two of us were like strength spotting, like people watching, like who, you know, and it was so funny to see just how strengths came out, and even just the language, like you would pick up on it and you'd be able to read someone, like, and this is also my individualization, you have high individualization, but even based on what they were saying, I mean, what they were wearing, how they were interacting, it was like, oh, you must be a little newer to strengths, or like you must have this thing maybe a little higher, and so just being able to pinpoint that, because I think it's an environment where everyone is just really able to be themselves, because we all have that common language, and that's such a thing about strengths, and how the whole summit wrapped up was this idea that's one global, it's one common language, and they had this really cool end presentation, but that's, people walked into it like that, so people were just real.
Yeah.
You know, it's just you are who you are.
Right. It was just being with 1,000 people who were encouraging authenticity of one another. It was phenomenal, and we learned so much, and we'll be sharing a lot of that with you at Program Coordinator Training Day. Some of the activities that I learned about in some sessions, some of the activities that Tess learned about, but just ways that we can encourage this energy elsewhere, beyond, you know, these 5 amazing words that describe the best of me. How can you take it and make it meaningful? And we were surrounded by people who are truly making businesses out of it, changing lives, changing the world because of it. So let's go with the format that you laid out. I'm going to stay as structured as humanly possible.
Yeah, we wrote it outline
today.
This time, you guys.
I was afraid I'd go over.
A lot of people will ask me, like, where's woo for you? Like, you're so comfortable in new social situations. And if you see, like, me at church on a Sunday, I'll know who's new. I'll go up and say hi to them, introduce myself. And I always talk about it in terms of my individualization.
It is.
And so it is. And it also, you know, definitely can be woo and pulling that and using that as a tool. But for me, my motivator is not necessarily the energy I get from meeting that person or, like, breaking the ice and the uncomfortableness of that. But with people with individualization, I get a good read on people before I interact with them, and so much of wanting to meet someone is to validate what I'm thinking about them. It really is.
Oh, absolutely.
It's to say, okay, so you are sending a message, right now in who you are, what you're wearing, and we've talked about this, all the communication you give, how you interact with people, what you brought along with you. And so I'm formulating all these things in my head, all these hypotheses about who you are. And so to interact with you, and then when you say, oh yeah, I'm a teacher, and I see your book bag, and I assume that from the beginning, it just validates my questions about them.
So I was thinking, it's what I see as woo, strength spotting, but what I was thinking about is it's actually in my head when I think about it. Now when I spot it in the moment, it's like, looks like woo.
Yeah.
When I think about it, it's individualization, strategic. Individualization, even context.
Yeah.
I want to know how you got here.
Yeah.
I want to know why you're here. I want to know where you came from. And there is a deep level of interest that really puts people at ease, Tess. That sometimes I think woos come off as fake. Like, I'm listening to you kind of, and I'm looking over here, who's the new person coming in? It comes off as fake. That's not what it feels like on me. And so I want people to really think about, where do you see strengths when you strength spot? They don't even have to be in somebody's top 5. And then ask them about it. Spot them. I made you wait. You were like, and tell me about that. Hurry up and tell me about that. I said, nope, we're waiting until we go live. Ask that person, I feel like I see this in you. So that you can learn about the other strengths and how they might pair together. It totally is your individualization. But in my head, because these are the ones I know so well, it was woo. So,
okay, so for me, for spotting you, definitely I was, okay, 2 instances I want to share. Well, one's more general and one's not. So number 1 is your input that I really saw. And so, which at a conference makes sense. So look at, this is her conference thing. That's like 2 days, not even. It was like 1 evening, a full day and a half day, okay.
I like paper.
So but also one thing I noticed that I've not picked up on before is when we were sitting next to each other in like a general session, we would sit at these big tables in the ballroom, and you were sitting next to me and someone would say something that we both pick up on that we want to write down. I would write everything down. Even if I started writing it down before you, it would take me longer, and you would write it down and you would be like, back engaged with what was going on.
Well, look at your handwriting.
And so
it's lovely, and it takes time. I mean, doing it.
Not as much, but okay, so my hypothesis behind this, my theory behind this is, okay, so if we were to look at what it was, this was for a session, but if we were to look at one of the same sessions, okay, my guess was that you did not do complete sentences.
No way.
I always write in complete sentences. So
when you're taking notes?
When I'm taking notes, I always write in complete sentences which I thought was very interesting. Because I thought, why don't you? Because maybe your communication will remember that.
Just a second.
Okay.
Why are they notes if you're writing total full sentences?
Because, wait, what does that even mean?
Do you know what the shorthand is?
Yes, I know what shorthand is.
So,
I tried it doesn't work.
Why?
For me. Because I can't necessarily, which is interesting because I can't necessarily remember my thought pattern. And also, when it's like something like this, strengths is one of the greatest ways to build resilience in young people. I want that exact wording, how that person said it. Because I won't be able to conjure up exactly what they said, and I want to represent them accurately.
So this is incredible to me because you can remember where I placed my keys in what container. But if you look back at words, you won't be able to remember. And see, I can hear it. I hope my friends and family are listening. I remember every conversation. So when I come back to you, spouse, I come back to you and say, no, you said it like this, and you did it like this, and you were wearing this, and it was at that time, and you said it exactly like this with this inflection. I heard you. I know it. It's in my head. So when I do my notes, it's in my head. Plus, I idea generate here. Like, get a recording of this for our staff. I'm going to put a whiteboard in my car and here in the office. Just mine. Little tiny whiteboard. But I want one in my car. So, and then I borrowed your highlighter, so I take away the things I want to do right away. So,
that's interesting.
If your how many notebooks do you go through?
This is my 4th for the year so far. But this is the smallest I've ever had in a notebook. So anyway, so
That is so fascinating.
Okay, so
Good.
So then, like, the whole thing with this is you need, so that's almost what I was hypothesizing, was that because of your communication, because of your input, you need a trigger to allow you to recall how someone, because you naturally pick up on how they're communicating. And so it is weird. I don't remember conversations as well. I sometimes, and I've realized this is because I'm so much in my head that sometimes I don't remember if I said it out loud to you or not, or if it was just a conversation I was having in my head with myself.
See, and I'm always like, did I say that already? I think I said that. And my kids do this at me when I've said the same thing or told the same story.
So anyway, so that was string spotting you, and then my other situation was about your connectedness, and Andrew Wu together. We were sitting at a table, and someone, oh gosh, see, here we go, my brain.
The last day.
The last day.
John.
No.
KU.
Oh yes, that.
Oh
But
my
I was
gosh, my
thinking
heart
the
was so
woman
full.
across, and dude. Oh, there was a woman who sat across from us that used to work at Boys Town.
Yeah.
And Allie was like, "Do you know this? Do you know this person?" Oh, and they knew or had a second degree connection between everyone she listed. And I was like, "That's your ruin, your connectedness. Like you can find those patterns and those ways that we are." We're connected to each other by a certain degree of separation.
For me, it was that I sat down and you pointed out, hey, this
Yeah.
guy's from KU, he had a KU cup.
Yeah.
And John is awesome. I mean, I learned that in just a short amount of time. And I said, oh, I loved it. We went there for a visit. And then I said, maybe you knew my friend Shane Lopez. And he said, my friend Shane Lopez too.
Wow.
And it was just
That's so
awesome,
good.
awesome moment. Awesome
So I
connection.
didn't know he knew Shane. We didn't get to that because we were just talking, and I was trying to introduce him to Mary, the woman sitting next to me on the other side, but as soon as I met him and he said he was from KU and he explained what he did, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, well this seat empty between us is for my coworker Allison, and she's gonna love you, and you're gonna hear all about her visit to KU and how much she loves the city of Lawrence. So
And then I really, really, really am
Yeah.
connected to him now. So it was great.
That's awesome.
It was awesome.
So, with that, there was so much strength spotting we got to do with ourselves and with other people. The next thing we wanted to talk about was Jim Clifton, who is now the president and CEO of Gallup, spoke the first day, and he really touched on what is changing within the workplace and what do we need to really grab a hold of in order to really meet the needs of the world now. So his session was called What the World Needs Now, and really talking about workplace engagement. And he referenced a slide that he brought up. He was like, I only used one slide and I wanted all our researchers to dial down everything we need to know as minimal as possible, and they sent me this one thing. And if you have been keeping up with Gallup research or anything that we talk about, we talk a lot about their millennial research that Gallup did. They published this last year, but they did a whole host of research on millennials and how they're changing kind of the life and the workplace. And what he referenced was a chart from that report. And I have an abbreviated version of the report, and we can send out
I was just gonna write
a
down.
screenshot of just the notes and synopsis from that to you all. But he referenced this one chart really about what past work and life was like, and really what the movement is towards in the future. And he really challenged the audience to say, if we don't grab a hold and start moving towards here, you're gonna see so much more turnover than you already see with young people. Young people are leaving jobs at unprecedented rates. They're continually searching for something new and something different that will appeal to really their needs. And so really a couple of the things that he really talked about that lent into the whole strengths-based lifestyle is, in the past, with the workplace and life is all about my satisfaction. So am I satisfied at work? Do I have the benefits and the things that I need? Am I getting done when I need to get done? But really the future is moving away from my satisfaction to my development. So what ongoing learning opportunities are there for me at work? What kind of advancement is there? I don't want to go, millennials, if you interview or look at most, they're not going to take a job where there's not a place for them to grow and to move up and to advance in the organization. Also, so what continuing ed options are there? Do I have a budget for conferences that I can go to or learning opportunities I can take a part of? Really the idea that a job isn't just going and getting something done, but it's a place to grow and to learn and to develop as an individual. And then the second really that I want to touch on was that, or two more actually, really from a weakness fixing mindset to a strengths-based mindset. And that is all of what we talk about with strengths, and the whole strengths model really is what the future is moving towards. It's not here's what you're doing wrong, so let's fix it so you can be a well-rounded person, but here's what you're doing really well at, and so we're going to grow and develop that, just like the last point. And then the final one is kind of moving from the past is my job to the future is my life. So work-life balance isn't very important for millennials. If it's something that they have passion about and they have purpose about, there's a sense of identity that's wrapped up in the 9 to 5 work hours. Those expand, those change, because you're so passionate and driven and motivated by what's going on in the workplace.
It was really a fascinating discussion. I love that he talked about when he graduated from college, his focus was, I want to buy a house, I want to have a wife, I want to have kids. And that was really the mentality then. And how over the last 20 years we have been evolving as a society, and we tend to blame it on our leadership. We tend to blame it on a president, but actually this has been happening for 20 years, and we're behind the mark. We're behind where we should be because we're not understanding that millennials want purpose. They're not looking for the paycheck, they're looking for purpose and intention in their life. And so when we've got these low numbers of engagement in the workplace, and not just in the workplace, we have low levels of engagement in our relationships, which leads into a little bit more about Tom Rath later on. But when you set this darn thing here, and I'm talking to you, I'm basically saying, this is more important than you. These in front of you at work, you have a, 15% productivity decline. I mean, I walked away from that thinking, we have got to understand our mentees better. Mentees better. I'm not even talking about millennials. I'm talking about the Gen Z. We have to be better understanding about who our mentees are, what engages them, what are they looking forward to, what does their future look like, because we can't come in thinking it's going to look like ours. So we've got to open up those dialogues, do some strength spotting. What does that strength feel like to you, and what do you want to do with it? How do you want to make it meaningful in your life, and how do you want to contribute to the lives of others?
So good, so good. Well, with that being said, do you want to talk about Tom Rath, or do you want to do Deepak first?
Oh, I want to talk about Deepak.
So for those people who don't know Deepak well, please tell them a little bit about who he is.
Deepak Chopra is a meditation yoga guru. He quoted a lot during his discussion about Gandhi and about that kind of practice and teaching, the teaching of being present, the teaching of peace, mindfulness, extending love towards one another, acceptance towards one another. And so he was really kind of their keynote. And I've been a fan of the Chopra Foundation and all the great work that he has done. His journey began as a physician, noticing that people were dying. And why were they dying? And what determined illness, and what were some factors? And a lot of it had to do with spirituality, and your physiological self, the whole being. And so his work really led him from a practicing physician to where he is today. So if you don't know about Deepak, look him up. He does great Soul Sunday sessions with Oprah. They have a 21-day meditation. He's got a great Instagram account, great Facebook page. Anyway, when I found out Deepak was going to be there, I was freaked out. I was so excited, over the moon excited. And so Tess was so sweet to stand in line for me, for him to sign my book so that I could hurry and get over there. And I walked up thinking I was going to say something zen and profound, and I was like, I really appreciate what you said. I really like your work. And I just looked like a total dork in my photo, and I was just overcome. It's kind of like when I met David Sedaris. I was like,
When I met Jim Collison. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, when you met Jim Collison. Meeting Deepak is right up there with like meeting Mick Jagger for me. So it was a wonderful moment. But I do want to talk a little bit about what he said. And, if you're not familiar with Deepak, you may have been like, okay, where is he going? What's happening? But what he did is he first read Let the Rabbits Run. If you've been to program coordinator training in years past, I give you a copy of that. It's about Brer Rabbit and how he goes to school. And they find out that Brer Rabbit is really, really good at hopping and pretty good at running, but instead they want him to swim. And it really talks about how difficult it is to not have a strength-based focused education or family or support system. So he read that, and that's a beautiful parable from Soar with Your Strengths, which is one of John Clifton's first books. So anyway, he read that, and just listening to Deepak's voice is so comforting and calming. But he talked about it's the conspiracy of the universe that you are here, and that you are in this moment, and you are right here, right now. What are you going to do with that? What will you do with your billions of cells and the cells that replicated in order for you to become uniquely, awesomely who you are? What are you going to do with that? What's your purpose? So we talked about what leaders do. Leaders look and listen. They emotionally bond and connect. One of the things he said, each of us is a stardust being, and we have a unique strengths gift.
Can I add in my favorite quote?
Yes.
It's right around that time. The soul is where we very tenderly house our desires, our dreams, and our greatest longings.
Yes. Soul profile.
Yeah, that was leader.
I love soul profile. But leaders have to be aware. You have to dare to dream, empower others, and take empowerment on your own. I loved what he said about you're beneath no one else, but you're not above anyone else either. And so just that level of empowerment and responsibility and synchronicity. I am a true believer in the moment where you are. The true self is not in time. Your experiences are in time. So the true self is really everlasting. What contribution do you want to make? All the understanding and all the questions about who you are lead to your soul profile. And so one of the things I thought about is how we ask our mentors when they take a strengths quest for the first time. We want them to go through and highlight words and phrases that sound like them, hand it over to someone close to them, say, how does this look on me? And then another session, what I learned is having them underline what they're not sure about. So one of the particular presenters, she runs a recovery center in LA that's designed for after rehab. Basically, after an addict goes through rehab, there's not post-recovery options available. So she has a place called Life Uncommon, and what she does is she provides resources, strength-based resources, for people who are trying to rebuild their life. And so what I loved is she said, we want them to underline the things that they're not sure about. So that a coach or a mentor or someone that you care about or you trust can tell you, a little bit more about that. They can help you to understand it a little bit better. So, holy healing health, the return of the memory of wholeness. I loved that. And the way that he, so Deepak leads with strategic connectedness, maximizer, adaptability, and futuristic. And I'm telling you, within 5 minutes of listening to him, you could pick up on all those strengths. It was easy to strengthify him. So that's my love of Deepak. I could go on all day about it, but I won't.
It was very good. He challenged us then, like Ali said, with that soul profile. Really, how do you view yourself? So, what do you think about yourself? How do you experience yourself? Understanding yourself deeply is vitally important, much more important than any profile you could put on LinkedIn or any profile that you could put on Facebook to understand really how you experience life, because like you said, your true self is independent from those experiences, but they really blend together. It tells someone a lot more than just a bio, he said. So how do you love? What do you contribute? Who are your heroes? What's joyful to you? What's your purpose? Those are really questions that transcend time or experience.
One of the things that he said that I thought you would probably grab in your notes, that boxes are historical conditioning. The boxes and the labels are historical conditioning. What if there wasn't a box? If integrity plus authenticity plus responsibility plus a higher calling was manifested to empower ourselves and to empower others. So I think part of the reason that we love strength so much is because we are both very passionate about not putting people in boxes and not putting people in labels. Even the cautiousness of putting them in positive labels. Labeling myself as a woo, or labeling you as a woo, or labeling those strengths. How can we really help people to manifest the best in themselves?
So good. So then Tom Rath was day 2. And we're just giving you a whole host of information. Here's a little snapshot of what we got to learn. But Tom Rath spoke, and he really spoke to ego sleep. And what he wrote there, he also wrote How Full Is Your Bucket?
Mm-hmm.
And he wrote and has been a big Gallup name for a long time. He's the grandson of Don Clifton, co-founder of Gallup. And he talked, and I know that you're going to talk all about the well-being, but one thing I want to touch on with his message is he talked about how when he was young, he got a diagnosis of a form of genetic pancreatic cancer susceptibility.
It's a genetic disease that actually, it just replicates tumors in his body. So his vision was first impaired because of constantly making tumors.
So he was given a life expectancy of 40 years old, 35 to 40, and from when he was very young, when he was a teenager, and and his strengths totally came up too when he was talking, but his whole message and what I didn't even realize I benefited so much from him, in just this simple diagnosis of something that is terminal, something that is negative, and what he has done and what he's accomplished with that almost as a driving factor. Like, it gave himself a sense of urgency for what he was doing with his life, that I have this end date. And it just kind of almost was kind of shocked me to the core, because I'm like, why wouldn't I be living with the same amount of purpose? Why don't we all live with that kind of purpose every day, every week? And it seems so much more life-giving, even though it was done with a terminal illness in his forefront, than living each day just as a repetition of the next. To have a drive, and he is futuristic in his top 5 in significance, and he was just so focused on what he wanted to accomplish. And then he joked because he reached his 35 years old, and he was like, well, I'm still living. What do I do next? I have it planned for the next 40, but to have that gift of it almost was a gift saying, this is what you have. And just his drive and his purpose behind that was so powerful for me, when I can get so caught up in the day-to-day and so caught up in the monotony, to say, okay, what if we lived life with that sense of drive and purpose every day, that we were all going towards this one goal, whatever it may look like in your own life.
So I loved his message. This is one of my favorite books. I'm going to read it again. What I loved about his message, other than putting the phone away, is how it wasn't until his grandpa was diagnosed with cancer that he wrote his grandpa a 15-page letter about his impact. I mean, Don was truly a mentor in all aspects to Tom. And in that letter, Don came back, and this was, I wish that I had known Don Clifton. I am very jealous of those who did know Don and learned from Don. But what I think Don did really, really well was Strength Spot. And so after he wrote that letter, Tom shared that it was the first time ever that someone had called out his strength in writing and communicating. Mm-hmm. And it was actually a negative label that he had received in high school, that stick to math, Tom. And the way that we say, stick to, you're not a good jumper, you're not a good hopper, or you're not a good swimmer like Brer Rabbit. But they were putting him in that, you're good at math, don't try writing. And Don said, I think you could help us share this story. And they sat down and wrote, in a couple months, wrote Strength Finder 2.0. So it's amazing to me how that strength spotting was happening, the way that Don was, even at that time, uncovering talent in another person. If we all do that for our mentees, if we do that for one another, if we truly really listen and we ask good questions, and we can uncover the talent in another person who hasn't yet noticed it.
Yeah.
What a gift that is when you talk about purpose and you talk about intention. What I walked away with from Tom was find your greatest contribution. And so this is really what we intend with Jen and Millie. How can we help to share this? To me, we've found a really surprising contribution. We've had very positive feedback about this. And I sometimes I'm like, seriously?
Really? Have you watched it?
And this is a great contribution that we're able to make, that I think we set intentions with one another. One of the things I'm going to ask you to do at program coordinator training, and Tess and I seem to do a lot of, find an accountability partner. And I think what Jen and Millie has been for me is to help me be more intentional, help me to be more directed towards my purpose, because right here I have an accountability partner who sits across from me in the office, but who also is on a video, and we're talking about these things, so we better be practicing them. And so that was such a great reminder from Tom to do these great things and make a contribution that we want, that will far outlast our time here.
So we're getting to wrap up, but we wanted
talk
to,
for so
we could talk
long.
forever about this, but one of the things we wanted to do before we wrapped up, so this might go a little bit longer than we normally will, is just say one takeaway from a breakout, one unique. So there were so many great breakouts, so many great people that just shared their knowledge, some that worked from Gallup, some that had their own private consulting businesses, some that worked for higher ed universities or private industries. And so what would you say is your greatest takeaway from a breakout session?
I attended Murray Guest, his breakout session on incorporating strength-based activities in a workshop setting. And so for those of you who come to program coordinator training, you're going to be part of one of those. I loved learning new ideas for groups, and always love learning new ideas for activities, because we're always trying to bring strengths activities into our staff days, into our mentor meetups. So I've got some great new activity ideas. So Murray, basically what he taught me about keeping things engaging and fun, something I knew, but something that I'm definitely planning to build on.
Cool. For me, I went to a session called The Thriving Self from Bruce Young, and he works for Gallup. He's based out of London, and he really affirmed something that I had shared with Allie before, and I shared it with her because I'm like, you're gonna love this, it'll be great, but I hadn't really applied it to my own life. And I read some research, it was in a medical journal or something, and I passed it along to you, and it was about the idea of subconsciousness and how your conscious thought is only about 20% of your thought, and subconsciously you are processing all the time, and that's about 80% of your thought pattern. And so this article that I read talked about tools in which in order to maximize that subconscious thought, especially while you're sleeping, because you're going to think anyway, so why don't you use that? Why don't you tap into that? And so that article posed the idea of asking yourself questions right before you go to bed about difficult situations or problems you're dealing with, and let your brain subconsciously process through the night. And in the morning, outputting everything. Before you grab your phone, before you make breakfast, output everything you're thinking, whether or not it's directly related to what the questions you asked the night before. Output everything, don't try and think about it, and then process later, come back to it and say, okay, did that help answer the questions? Let your mind go where it goes. And so really what Bruce Young talked about was really, once again, tapping into that conscious thought, and really the idea that turning your strengths on and off, like we talked about, dialing down your strengths, moving up your strengths, is not as easy as you think it is. It really isn't. We can say it, but it's because we have habits, we have attitudes, we have belief patterns, and we have expectations in our lives that drive those things. So saying, I'm gonna, tune down my woo a little bit in this situation, it's easy to say, but less easy to put into practice, because your body has these your body goes where your mind goes, and your mind's going to go to, I have to meet this person, or I have to do this. And so it really was a good challenge of the power of our own thoughts, and how we really do have that. He talked about it in terms of a locus of control. We do have that internally, and it's really up to us just to learn and start implementing practices in order to tap into the power of our subconscious thought potential.
Have you ever woke up with this song in your head?
Yes.
So you have challenged me to, pose some questions in my mind before I go to sleep. I woke up. Now, rarely do I'll hear a song sometimes, but one sticks with me. I may have mentioned that I do a lot of Gabby Bernstein reading and meditation, and she drives you to finding your symbol, to meditate and think about what image am I drawn to, and mine is heart. And the other morning, I woke up with a Jefferson Starship song called, I can't remember what the title is, but it's Find Your Way Back to the Heart. I think it's Jefferson Starship. I should have looked it up before I got in here and said that. Find Your Way Back to the Heart. And it has been playing now in my head since. And I thought of all of those things about the thriving self, and the way that what you're even pondering, even the little bit that you don't think you're giving time and focus to. So directing that in a meaningful way.
So good.
So we'll see all of you at Gallup Strengths Day next Wednesday. We're super excited to have you there. And we'll do some strength spotting there as well. And then I think our next Will our next Jen and Millie be after that?
After Strengths Day.
But
The
after,
partnership.
what about Call to Coach?
No,
Okay.
because that's the 3rd. That's August.
Okay, so we have so much to look forward to.
So much to look forward to. And all
Yes.
of this, just so you all know, I mean, we are here to share what we've learned with you. And so this is something that we had the very, very grateful opportunity that we both had to attend the summit this year. Really, it was such a gift to both of us, but this learning isn't for our own self. The Thriving Self is something that I would love to share with all of you to learn more about. And so if anything that we talked about or touched on today really interests you, let us know, and we would be happy to hop on a phone call or to write out some of our notes or to share more of what we've learned with you really in depth. We've just touched the surface of a lot of what we've learned, and there are so many great resources, so much great information, and we know not all of you will have the opportunity to go to a Strength Summit, which is why we got to go, to be able to share and release this information to you
Maybe
as
we'll
well.
put some blog posts together
Yep.
to be able to share that. Thanks, you guys.
Yeah,